Hello, everybody, and welcome to science class. This is our last science class of the year. Wah! I love science, and I love that we've been studying for the last 2 months about the universe and the solar system. So today, we're just going to basically review some of that information. It's presented in a new way, but it's a review of that information. And then after this story, we will have a matching worksheet that'll be a separate video, and we'll try to figure out what order, what's in the middle of our solar system, and what's next, and what's next, and what's next, and what's next. Like that. What's the first, second, and third planet? So pay attention as we go through now, and maybe you'll be able to just ace that little matching thing that we do later. The universe began with a big bang. And everything that is, that was, and that ever will be blew out of the middle of the tiniest little infinitesimal point. It might be so small that it wasn't even there. Then everything that is now blew out of that. And we call that theory the Big Bang. We call it a theory because, well, believe it or not, nobody alive now is quite old enough to have been there when it happened. So it's only a theory, but it explains so much of everything that scientists see, how things have developed, how the universe is expanding constantly, and all kinds of really neat stuff like that. Let me move out of the way there a little bit. In our universe, the stars, the gas, the galaxies, everything we can see only make up about 4% of what we think is out there. 4%, what does that sound like? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4. That sounds like a pretty big number, except that you have to keep counting all the way up to 100 to see what 4% means. So if you had a big glass of Coca-Cola and you only got to drink 4% of it, you'd only get one sip, and all of the rest would go somewhere else and you would never see it. So scientists measure stuff and they make theories, and they found that there's only about 4%. We can only see about 4% of what's out there. Now, as scientists, astrophysicists, have looked out into space and the stars, they have confirmed more than 900 extrasolar planets. That means planets that are outside our solar system. We always thought that maybe our solar system was like other solar systems in the universe. But we can think that. It's another thing to go out and look and see it and prove it. So scientists have been proving it by looking at other stars and finding that, you know what, there really are other planets. And they've confirmed there's more than 900. And they keep looking and keep looking and keep looking and keep finding and keep finding and keep finding. It's amazing. It's so cool. Our own solar system is made up of planets, asteroids, comets, clouds of dust orbiting around a star we call the sun. And look at this really neat picture here. It has a picture of the sun and the planets, the asteroid belt, and more planets out here, little ones, and a comet. It's really neat picture. So let's start in the middle of our solar system. In the middle is our sun, a middle-aged star. That means it probably has kids. It might be teenagers by now. It's about 4.6 billion years old, but it's still younger than the universe, which is another 10 billion years older. Oh my goodness, that's so old. Our sun, in the middle of our solar system, makes up about 99% of the matter in the solar system. That's how huge and massive it is. Now, think of my glass of Coca-Cola I was talking about. If you had a glass of Coca-Cola, you could drink the whole thing down except for the last sip. And that amount that you drank would represent how much of the solar system is in the sun, in the middle of the solar system. Our next planet out, the first planet from the sun, is called Mercury. Mercury, we also call it the innermost because it's on the inside of the planets that revolve around the sun, and it's the smallest. And it's one of our 4 rocky planets. Now, Mercury speeds around the sun once every 88 Earth days. So it goes around a whole bunch of times in the amount of time that it takes the Earth to go around once. The next planet out, which is slightly smaller than our planet, is called Venus. And it's blanketed in a cloud of carbon dioxide 40 miles thick. That's a huge amount of thickness of carbon dioxide atmosphere. And so it gets really hot on Venus because of that blanket of carbon dioxide atmosphere. The blanket keeps all of the sun's heat inside, and it just builds up and builds up and builds up. Earth is the next planet out, known as the third rock from the sun, because of the inner planets are rocky planets, and it's the third rocky planet out from the sun. So it's the third rock from the sun. And there was a TV show called that, The Third Rock from the Sun, too. It's the planet we live on. It's a very comfortable home. I like it on Earth. Now, as we travel out through the solar system, we get to Mars next, and Mars is about half the size of Earth. Mars has 2 moons, Phobos and Deimos, and neither one of those moons are round. They're not small enough. They're not large enough to be round, but they're moons. They orbit Mars anyway. Then, as we travel out, we come across the asteroid belt. It's a belt of debris, of rocks. They come in all shapes and sizes, but most of them orbit the sun between Mars and Jupiter. And in the middle of all of that, there's a small, what we call a dwarf planet. It's even smaller than Pluto, called Ceres. It's in there too. Now, as we go on out, the next planet, the 5th planet, is called Jupiter. It's the largest planet in our solar system, and it's so big that all of the other planets could fit inside it. Isn't that something? I don't know if they'd want to or not, but they could if they wanted to. The next planet out, the 6th planet out, is called Saturn. And Saturn is famous for its rings. It has beautiful rings that are clearly visible, well, through a telescope. I mean, you can't just go out right now and look and say, oh, look at Saturn's famous rings. You have to look at them through a telescope. But through a telescope, they're very beautiful and very clearly seen. It's made out of gas, so just like Jupiter, it's a gas giant with no surface to walk on. I don't know what would you do? You just be sucked in and float all around in that place. No place to walk. The next planet, the 7th planet, is called Uranus. All of the other planets go around in circles like this, in circles around the sun and stuff. But Uranus rolls. It has what's called a 98-degree tilt to its axis. It almost lays on its side. Scientists think that there was some mismatched orbits a few billion years ago when our solar system was being created and stuff got kind of slingshotted and flung around, and that maybe Jupiter was even much closer to the sun at one point. Then the eighth planet, look, it has rings too. And we didn't know that because we can't see them very well from the Earth. But we had a planetary craft went flying by and took pictures of it. And look, lo and behold, there was rings around Neptune. It also has the wildest weather of any planet in the solar system, with winds of its atmosphere whipping through it hundreds of miles an hour. Now, is that the edge of the solar system, you may ask? No, there's much more. Out there, out past Neptune, we have what are called the dwarf planets, Pluto. We used to think Pluto was a planet, but since there are a lot of different objects the same size out there, we decided to call it a dwarf planet, not a real planet, because it's just a little bit different than the bigger planets. So we have Pluto, Eris. Now, Ceres, I told you, we call it a dwarf planet, but it's all the way in toward the asteroid belt. And you can see how much smaller Ceres is than Pluto and Eris. And then there's Haumea, and there's Makemake. Look at those. Aren't those cute? So those are dwarf planets. Now let's see. Now, is that the edge of our solar system? Let's see. Oh, look. Beyond Neptune, there's a whole bunch of more objects out there, and we call that the Kuiper Belt. And it extends for hundreds of millions of miles past the dwarf planets. And here you can see this little erratic orbit here, and that's probably Pluto going around there. Now, is that the edge of our solar system, you may ask? No! Beyond the Kuiper Belt, there's the Oort cloud that extends for another hundreds of millions of miles, encircling our entire solar system. I don't know if you can see these. This says AUs, which is astronomical units. 1 astronomical unit represents the distance between the Earth and the Sun. I don't know if you remember, but as we were looking at things, Neptune was 30 astronomical units away from the Sun. And we put that 30 would be about right there where the tip of my arrow is. That'd be all the way out. And then look at this. 100,000 astronomical units away from the Sun is what we think is the edge of our solar system. It's really awesome. Well, that's my review, and that's my story for today for science. Be sure that you check out the matching part that goes along with this, and I will see you there.